I thought tonight would be perfect. That's the thing about perfect moments. They're so fragile they shatter if you look at them too closely. The restaurant's soft lighting cast everyone in their most flattering glow, including my husband of 10 years. Devon looked particularly handsome tonight, his dark hair just starting to silver at the temples, his blue eyes catching the candlelight as he raised his glass. "To us," he said. "To 10 years with the most ambitious woman I know." I smiled, clinking my glass against his. The champagne tasted expensive and crisp, exactly what you'd expect at Oriole, where the waitstaff knew us by name and never rushed us through our meals. Devon had arranged everything: the corner table overlooking the city, my favorite flowers, even the small velvet box sitting between us that I was pretending not to notice. "You're staring at it," he said, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm not," I lied, taking another sip of champagne. "Open it, Melanie." I set down my glass and reached for the box, feeling a flutter of anticipation. 10 years of marriage, and he could still make my heart race. I lifted the lid to find a pair of diamond earrings that caught the light so brilliantly I almost gasped. "They're beautiful," I said, genuinely moved. "Thank you." Only the best for the woman who built an empire alongside me. There was something in his tone, a slight edge I couldn't quite place, but I brushed it aside, slipping the earrings on and feeling their weight against my neck. "Speaking of empires," Devon continued, his voice dropping to that intimate pitch that always made me lean in closer, "I have some news about the company. My company. Well, our company, technically, but Meyer Consulting had been my brainchild, my late nights, my sacrificed weekends. Devon had come on later, bringing his connections and charm to what I'd already built with sweat and strategy." "What kind of news?" I asked, reaching for my water glass to ease the sudden dryness in my throat. "The board meeting yesterday. I didn't want to spoil the surprise before our anniversary." My stomach tightened. "What surprise?" "They voted to restructure the executive team." His smile remained perfectly in place. "Effective immediately, I'll be taking over as CEO." The water glass froze halfway to my lips. "That's not possible. I'm the CEO." "We're the CEO," he corrected gently, as if explaining something to a child. "The board felt we needed fresh leadership for the expansion into European markets. The board can't make that decision without me. I hold controlling interest." Devon's smile shifted into something I'd never seen before, or perhaps had never allowed myself to see. "Not anymore. The stock transfers went through last week." "What stock transfers?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. His wedding ring caught the light, the gold band I'd placed there a decade ago. "Don't worry. You'll still have a role as creative director. Your vision is valuable, Melanie, just not your management style." I pulled my hand away. "This is illegal. You can't transfer my shares without my signature." "Actually, I can. Remember that power of attorney you signed when we were dealing with your father's estate? It had some rather broad language." He took a casual sip of champagne. "Your father always said you were brilliant, but careless with details." The restaurant seemed to tilt around me. My father had been dead for 3 years. Devon had been planning this for at least that long. "Why?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper. "Business is business," he said with a small shrug. "You built something remarkable, but you've hit your ceiling. The investors agree. The company needs someone who can take it global. Someone like you." The words tasted bitter. "Exactly like me." His tone was almost gentle. "You're too emotional, too attached to the original vision. Sometimes you need to burn things down to build them higher." I thought of all the nights I'd worked while he networked, all the clients I'd secured while he charmed. I'd believed we were a team. What a fucking joke. "So this dinner, the earrings, what is this? A consolation prize?" I touched one of the diamonds, suddenly wanting to rip it from my ear. "It's an anniversary gift," he said, sounding genuinely confused by my reaction. "I thought you'd be relieved. You've been working too hard for too long. Now you can focus on the creative side without all the pressure. The waiter approached with our appetizers, his practiced smile faltering slightly as he sensed the tension. Is everything all right with your champagne? Everything's perfect, Devon answered smoothly. My wife is just a bit overwhelmed. It's our anniversary. The waiter nodded and retreated. I stared at the food in front of me. Tuna tartare arranged in a perfect circle, garnished with microgreens and edible flowers. My stomach churned. You should eat, Devon said, lifting his fork, and try to see this as an opportunity. Change can be good for us. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd missed the stranger sitting across from me all these years. But I forced my lips into a smile, one I'd perfected in boardrooms full of men who underestimated me. You're right, I said, picking up my fork. I'm sure you have more surprises planned for tonight. His eyes lit up, mistaking my calm for acceptance. That's my girl. And yes, actually, I do have more surprises. This is just the beginning. I bet it is, I thought, taking a bite I couldn't taste. And so is this. I spent the rest of our anniversary dinner in a fog, nodding at appropriate intervals while my mind raced through every document I'd signed in the past 3 years. The power of attorney had been for handling my father's accounts while I was in Shanghai closing our biggest deal to date. I'd trusted Devon completely. Ready to head home? He asked, signing the check with a flourish. Home. The penthouse we'd bought together when Meyer Consulting landed its first $1 million client. Another thing he could probably take from me with the stroke of a pen. Actually, I said, sliding my chair back, I'm meeting Michaela for drinks. His eyebrows rose slightly. Tonight? It's our anniversary. Which you've commemorated by stealing my company, I replied, keeping my voice light enough that nearby diners wouldn't notice. I think we're done celebrating. A flash of annoyance crossed his face before settling back into that practiced smile. Don't be dramatic, Melanie. We can talk about your new role tomorrow. I have some ideas you'll love. I stood up, clutching my purse like a shield. I'm sure you do. Don't wait up, he called after me as I walked away. I didn't look back. Outside, the October air hit my face like a slap. I gulped it down, trying to steady myself as I texted Michaela. Emergency. Meet at our spot in 20. Her reply came instantly. Already ordering your drink. That calculating bastard, Michaela said, pushing another whiskey toward me. I never trusted him. Yes, you did, I corrected her, taking a long sip. We all did. That's his superpower. We were tucked into the back booth at O'Malley's, a dive bar we'd frequented since our 20s. The place was a stark contrast to Oriole. Sticky floors instead of white tablecloths, neon beer signs instead of candlelight. It felt more honest. What are you going to do? She asked. I stared into my glass. I don't know yet. Call a lawyer, obviously. Call Lionel, she suggested. He's ruthless. He's also expensive. So, you're rich. Am I? I laughed bitterly. I need to check what else Devon's done. For all I know, he's drained our accounts too. Michaela's eyes widened. Would he go that far? 24 hours ago, I would have said no. I finished my drink in one burning swallow. Now I have no idea what he's capable of. My phone buzzed with a text from Reagan, my executive assistant. Just heard the news. Call me when you can. My stomach dropped. He's already telling people at the office. Of course he is, Michaela said. He needs to control the narrative. I thought about Reagan. Young, ambitious, loyal. She'd been with me for 3 years, watching and learning. Would she stay loyal now that power had shifted? I need to go home and get some things, I said, standing up. Before Devon changes the locks or something. Michaela grabbed my arm. Stay with me tonight. Whatever you need, get it tomorrow when he's at the office. I hesitated, then nodded. You're right. I need to think clearly first. I slept fitfully on Michaela's couch, dreaming of falling from great heights. By morning, my shock had hardened into something colder and more focused. I waited until 9:30, when I knew Devon would be at the office, my office, before going home. The penthouse was silent when I entered. I moved quickly to our bedroom, pulling out a suitcase and filling it with essentials. As I grabbed my jewelry box, I noticed the diamond earrings from last night sitting on my vanity. I left them there. In Devon's closet, I paused. His suits hung in perfect rows, color coordinated, each one worth more than what most people made in a month. I ran my fingers along the sleeves, remembering how I used to straighten his ties before big meetings. Something caught my eye. A small safe in the back corner that hadn't been there before. My heart raced as I knelt down to examine it. Keypad entry, high-end model. When had he installed this? I tried our anniversary date 1012. Nothing, his birthday 0827, nothing. On a hunch, I tried the date Meyer Consulting was founded, 0516. The safe clicked open. Inside were stacks of documents, financial statements, contracts, emails printed and organized in folders. I pulled them out with shaking hands, scanning the contents. They detailed years of planning, conversations with board members, secret meetings with investors. One name appeared repeatedly, Ciara Kelly, our head of international development. I found a photo of them together at a hotel bar in Singapore, his hand on her waist, her lips close to his ear. The date stamp showed it was taken during a business trip 3 months ago, a trip I was supposed to attend, but canceled when my mother had her surgery. Buried beneath everything was a document outlining Project Phoenix, a complete restructuring of Meyer Consulting that eliminated nearly every initiative I'd championed. My client relationships, my mentorship program for women in business, my ethical investment guidelines, all marked for phase out. My hands were steady as I took photos of everything with my phone. The grief I'd felt last night was burning away, replaced by something hotter and cleaner. This wasn't just business. This was personal. My phone rang. Reagan. I answered immediately. Melanie, she whispered. I don't have much time. There's an emergency board meeting at noon. Devon's announcing a merger with Apex Global. My blood went cold. Apex was our biggest competitor, known for hostile takeovers and stripping companies for parts. He can't do that without, I started. He has the votes, she interrupted. Ciara's been working the board for months. I've been copying files for you, but I think they're watching me. What should I do? I looked down at the evidence in my hands. Keep your head down. Act normal. I'll contact you when it's safe. As I hung up, my gaze fell on a framed photo of Devon and me from our wedding day. We looked so happy, so certain of our future together. I picked it up and hurled it against the wall, glass shattering across the hardwood floor. Enough, I said to the empty room. This ends now. I needed someone who wouldn't flinch at what I was about to do. Someone who understood that in business, sometimes you had to be the predator to avoid becoming prey. I needed Nora. Finding her wasn't difficult. Nora Walker kept to her routines even in retirement. Every Wednesday morning, she took her coffee at the same corner table at Evergreen Cafe, reading financial papers and terrorizing young entrepreneurs who dared approach her for advice. When I walked in, her eyes flicked up from her newspaper, narrowed briefly, then returned to the article she was reading. I ordered a black coffee and slid into the seat across from her, without waiting for an invitation. You look like shit, she said without looking up. Good morning to you too. She folded her paper precisely and set it aside. Nora had been my first boss, my mentor, and occasionally my harshest critic. At 55, she'd retired from running one of the largest investment firms in the city, but her reputation still made grown men nervous in boardrooms. I assume this isn't a social call, she said, studying me over her reading glasses. I slid my phone across the table, open to the photos I'd taken of Devon's documents. I need your help. She scrolled through them methodically, her expression unchanging. When she finished, she pushed the phone back to me and took a long sip of her coffee. You married a snake, she said finally. I know that now. I told you 10 years ago. I gripped my coffee cup tighter. You told me he was ambitious. I told you he was the kind of ambitious that doesn't care who gets hurt. She leaned forward. But that's not important now. What matters is what you're going to do about it. I want to fight back, take back my company. And your dignity? She asked pointedly. I flinched. That too. Nora nodded slowly. You'll need a lawyer, not one of those corporate yes-men your firm keeps on retainer. I was thinking of Lionel Weaver. A rare smile crossed her face. Good. He's a shark. Call him today. She paused, considering. But legal action takes time. What's your immediate plan? I hesitated. I'd been so consumed by the betrayal that I hadn't thought beyond exposing Devon. I need to stop the merger with Apex. If that goes through, there won't be anything left of my company to save. Then you need leverage, Nora said simply. Something Apex wants more than they want Devon. My mind raced through possibilities. Our Asian market partnerships. Apex has been trying to break into Shanghai for years. And who controls those relationships? I do, personally. A small flame of hope flickered in my chest. The contracts are with me, not the company. Nora's eyes gleamed with approval. Now you're thinking like a businesswoman instead of a wounded wife. The distinction stung, but she was right. I needed to separate the personal betrayal from the business problem. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I found evidence that Devon's been working with Sierra Kelly to undermine me. They've been close. Sleeping together? Nora asked bluntly. I nodded, the admission making my throat tight. Use it if you need to, she said without sympathy. But remember, exposing their affair might satisfy your pride, but it won't get your company back. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Lionel. Nora said you need help. My office, 2 p.m. Lionel Weaver's office was nothing like I expected. Instead of gleaming glass and chrome, it was all worn leather and dark wood, like stepping into an old detective novel. The man himself matched the decor. Rumpled suit, perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, eyes that missed nothing. So, he said after I'd laid out my situation, your husband stole your company using a power of attorney you signed. He's planning to sell it to your biggest competitor, and he's sleeping with one of your executives. That about covers it. He leaned back in his chair. And you want it all back? Yes. Why? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean, why? It's my company. Companies get bought and sold every day, he said, watching me carefully. You could take what's left of your money, start something new. Why fight this battle? I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it again. The truth was complicated. Yes, I wanted my company back, but this wasn't just about business. Because he thinks I'll just accept it, I said finally. Roll over and play the supportive ex-wife while he dismantles everything I built. My voice cracked slightly. He's counting on me being too embarrassed, too hurt to fight back. Lionel nodded slowly. That's better. Now we're getting somewhere. Can you help me? Maybe. He pulled out a legal pad. The power of attorney is our biggest hurdle. Do you have a copy? I shook my head. It was 3 years ago when my father died. We'll need to see exactly what you signed. In the meantime, we need to delay that merger. He scribbled something down. When's the vote? Tomorrow at noon. He looked up sharply. That's not much time. I know. Do you have any allies on the board? I thought about it. Maybe 1 or 2, but Devon's been working them for months. And what about this Reagan person, the assistant who called you? She's loyal to me, but she's young, scared. Lionel tapped his pen against the pad. Call her. Tell her to send any documents about the merger to this secure email. He wrote it down and slid it across to me. And Melanie? Be careful. Corporate espionage is still a crime, even when it's your own company. As I stood to leave, he added, One more thing. Where are you staying? With a friend. Good. Don't go home again, not until this is over. I nodded, but as I reached the door, a thought stopped me. Lionel, what if we can't stop this? What if I've already lost? He studied me for a long moment. Then we make sure Devon loses more. The words settled over me like a cold blanket. I'd come seeking justice, but what Lionel was offering sounded more like revenge. The frightening part wasn't that I was considering it. It was how right it felt. Call your assistant, he said quietly. We need those documents. I pulled out my phone, my fingers already dialing Reagan's number. Reagan's voice was barely above a whisper when she answered. I can't talk long. They've called an all-hands meeting in 10 minutes. I need the merger documents, I said, pacing outside Lionel's office. Everything you can find. Can you access Devon's email? No, but she hesitated. I have something better. Ciara left her laptop open when she went to lunch. I forwarded some files to my personal email. My heart raced. Reagan, that's risky, I know. But you do the same for me. The confidence in her voice surprised me. I'm sending them now. There's something else you should know. Devon's telling everyone you had a breakdown, that you're taking a mental health sabbatical. The words hit like a physical blow. A breakdown? He showed up this morning with this whole concerned husband act. Said you've been under too much pressure, that you'd been making erratic decisions. Her voice dropped even lower. People are buying it, Melanie. Even people who've worked with you for years. Of course they were. Devon had always been the charming one, the one who remembered birthdays and brought coffee to early meetings. I was the demanding one, the perfectionist who pushed for excellence. It wouldn't be hard to reframe my drive as instability. Send everything you can, I said. And Reagan, be careful. Always am. She paused. One more thing. There's a pre-merger celebration tonight at the Loft. Everyone's going to be there. Board members, Apex executives. Might be your last chance to talk to people before tomorrow's vote. After we hung up, I stood motionless, processing. Devon wasn't just taking my company. He was taking my reputation, my credibility, making sure that even if I fought back, no one would listen. It's worse than we thought, Lionel said, scanning through the documents Reagan had sent. We'd been holed up in his office for hours, piecing together Devon's plan. The merger isn't just a merger. Apex is going to absorb Meyer Consulting completely, then spin off the parts they don't want. Which parts? I asked, though I already knew. The foundation work, the mentorship programs, the ethical investment division. He looked up at me. Everything you cared about most. I stared at the wall behind him, where framed newspaper clippings chronicled his biggest legal victories. Would my downfall end up there someday? What about the power of attorney? I asked. He shook his head. It's ironclad. Devon had it drafted specifically to give him control over all your business interests, not just your father's estate. You signed it. Without reading it carefully enough, I admitted. We've all made that mistake. His tone was gentler than I'd heard before. The question is, what do we do now? I checked my watch. 6:30. The celebration would be starting soon. I'm going to that party, I said. Lionel frowned. That's not a good idea. You'll be walking into hostile territory. Exactly. They won't expect it. I stood up, smoothing down my wrinkled blouse. I need to change first. Melanie, he said, his voice serious. What's your plan here? I met his gaze steadily. To remind them who built Meyer Consulting, and to make sure they know exactly what they're throwing away. Michaela stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You want to crash a party where your cheating husband and his mistress are celebrating stealing your company? Yes. I rummaged through her closet, looking for something to wear. My own clothes were still at the penthouse. I need to borrow a dress. This is insane, she said, but she was already pulling out options. What if Devon makes a scene? He won't, I said with certainty. Public scenes aren't his style. He'll play the concerned husband, try to hustle me out quietly. She handed me a black dress with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be noticeable without being inappropriate. And what will you do? I'll talk to the board members, plant seeds of doubt about the merger. With what leverage? You said yourself that Devon has the votes locked up. I slipped into the dress and turned to the mirror. Without my usual polished appearance, with shadows under my eyes and my hair hastily styled, I looked different, vulnerable, human. Maybe that's my leverage, I murmured. Michaela appeared behind me in the reflection. What do you mean? Devon's painting me as unstable, right? The crazy wife who couldn't handle the pressure? I turned to face her. What if I lean into that? Just enough to make people uncomfortable, to make them wonder what else he might be lying about. That's risky, she said slowly. You've spent your whole career being taken seriously. And now I have nothing to lose. I slipped on the heels she'd laid out. Are you coming with me? She grabbed her purse without hesitation. Someone has to bail you out when this goes sideways. The loft was buzzing with conversation when we arrived, the city's skyline providing a glittering backdrop through floor-to-ceiling windows. I spotted Devin immediately, holding court near the bar, Kira at his side wearing a dress I recognized from my own closet. Conversations stuttered as people noticed me. A waiter offered champagne. I took a glass but didn't drink. "Melanie," came a voice to my right. "Marcus, one of the board members. We didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," I said, smiling tightly. "I heard there was a celebration. Of course I wouldn't miss it." His eyes darted nervously toward Devin, who had now spotted me. "Devin mentioned you were taking some time off." "Did he?" I kept my voice light. How thoughtful of him to be concerned. But I'm feeling much better now. Clear-headed enough to wonder why my board is rushing into a merger without proper due diligence. Marcus's expression shifted from discomfort to wariness. "The documentation is quite thorough." "Is it? Have you seen the projections for what happens to our Asian partnerships after the merger?" "Because I have." Before he could respond, Devin appeared at his side, his smile fixed in place. "Melanie, this is a surprise." "Is it?" I met his gaze directly. "I thought you'd be expecting me. After all, we're still partners, aren't we? In business and in life?" The challenge hung between us. Around us, conversations had hushed as people strained to listen. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Though I'm concerned you're pushing yourself too hard. Why don't we talk privately?" As he reached for my arm, I stepped back, bumping into someone. My champagne splashed across the front of Kiara's dress. "Oh," I said, not bothering to sound sincere. "How clumsy of me." Kiara's mouth opened in shock as the champagne darkened the fabric of her dress. My dress. For a moment, the room went completely silent. "I think you've had enough," Devin said quietly, his fingers closing around my upper arm. To everyone watching, he probably looked like a concerned husband. Only I could feel how his nails dug into my skin. "You're right," I replied, voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearest us. "I've had enough of a lot of things." His grip tightened. "Let's get you home." "I'm not going anywhere with you." I pulled away, turning to face the small crowd that had gathered. "I apologize for the interruption, everyone. Please, enjoy celebrating the dismantling of everything I've built over the last decade." Marcus stepped forward, discomfort evident on his face. "Melanie, perhaps this isn't the best venue." "For what? The truth?" I locked eyes with him. "Tell me, Marcus, did Devin show you the real projections for what happens to our Asian partnerships after the merger? Or just the fantasy numbers Apex provided?" A flash of uncertainty crossed his face. Good. A seed planted. "This is exactly what I was concerned about," Devin said, addressing the room with practiced sympathy. "Melanie's been under tremendous strain, making accusations, seeing conspiracies. Like the conspiracy of you sleeping with Kiara while planning to steal my company?" The words came out before I could stop them. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kiara's face flushed deep red as she backed away, still dabbing at her ruined dress. Devin's expression hardened for just an instant before smoothing into concern again. "This is what I mean, these paranoid delusions. I have the hotel receipts, Devin. A bluff, but a calculated one. Singapore, 3 months ago." Something flashed in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or just surprise that I knew. It was enough to make several board members exchange glances. "I think we should continue this conversation privately," he said, voice tight. "I agree," came a new voice. I turned to see Nora Walker cutting through the crowd like an icebreaker through thin ice. "In fact, I insist on it." Relief washed over me. I hadn't expected her to come. "Nora," Devin said, recovering quickly. "I didn't realize you were invited." "I wasn't," she replied coolly. "But when I heard Melanie was making an appearance, I thought she might need backup." She turned to the crowd. "For those who don't know me, I'm Nora Walker. I mentored Melanie when she was building Meyer Consulting from nothing but ambition and brilliance." Her gaze swept the room, lingering on board members. "And I'm very interested in why this merger is being rushed through without standard due diligence. almost as if someone's afraid of what might be discovered with proper scrutiny. The atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Nora's reputation carried weight that even Devon couldn't easily dismiss. "We should go," Michaela whispered in my ear. "You've made your point." She was right. I'd created exactly the disruption I'd intended. As Nora engaged several board members in conversation, Michaela and I slipped toward the exit. Devon caught up to us at the elevator. "That was quite a performance," he said, voice low and dangerous. "But it changes nothing. The vote happens tomorrow, and I have the numbers." I met his gaze steadily. "We'll see." "You're only hurting yourself, Melanie. Walk away now, take the settlement I'm prepared to offer, and you can still have a career somewhere else." The elevator doors opened. As I stepped inside, I turned back to him. "You know what your mistake was, Devon? You taught me too well. Never show mercy in business." His face hardened as the doors closed between us. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," Michaela said as we rode down to the lobby. "Maybe both." I leaned against the elevator wall, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me shaky. "Did you see their faces?" I asked. "The board members, they're having doubts." "Doubts aren't enough to change votes," she pointed out, "not when contracts are already drawn up." The elevator doors opened to the lobby, where a familiar figure waited. Reagan, her expression tense. "What are you doing here?" I asked, alarmed. "If Devon sees you—" "I had to risk it," she said, pulling me aside. "They fired me an hour ago, said I was accessing files I shouldn't have." My stomach dropped. "Reagan, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I knew the risk." She glanced around nervously. "But there's something you need to know. The Apex CEO, Thomas, he's upstairs right now having second thoughts about the merger." "What? Why?" "Your Asian partners. When they heard about the merger, 3 of them called to say they'd pull out if Apex takes over. Apparently, they had some bad history with Apex in the past." My mind raced. The partnerships I'd cultivated personally over years of relationship building. Of course they'd be loyal to me, not the company structure. "This changes everything," I said. "If Apex is getting cold feet—" "Devon's scrambling to save the deal," Reagan continued. "He's offering Thomas something else to sweeten the pot." "What?" She hesitated. "Your client list, all your personal connections. He's promising Thomas that he can deliver them regardless of the partnerships." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Those relationships weren't just business assets. They were people who trusted me, who'd built their companies alongside mine. "He can't deliver what he doesn't have," I said, a new resolve hardening within me. "Those relationships are with me, not Meyer Consulting." Michaela touched my arm. "What are you thinking?" I pulled out my phone. "I need to make some calls, tonight." "To who?" "Everyone." I scrolled through my contacts. Every client, every partner, every connection I've made in the last decade. I'm going to burn it all down before I let Devon sell it off." Reagan's eyes widened. "That's nuclear. You'd be destroying your own company." "No," I said, the path suddenly clear before me. "I'd be saving what matters. The people, the relationships, the trust. Devon can have the empty shell." As we walked out into the night, I felt lighter than I had in days. For the first time since this began, I wasn't just reacting to Devon's moves. I was making my own. "I need a quiet place to work," I said. "This is going to be a long night." By 4 in the morning, my throat was raw and my ear burned from being pressed against my phone for hours. I'd spoken to clients in 3 time zones, partners across 2 continents, and every industry connection who would take my call at an ungodly hour. "That's the last one," I said, setting my phone down on Michaela's kitchen table. Reagan had fallen asleep on the couch hours ago, but Michaela had stayed up, making coffee, and occasionally squeezing my shoulder when a particularly difficult call ended. "How many agreed?" she asked, sliding a fresh mug toward me. 17 major clients, 9 partners. I rubbed my eyes. "All willing to follow me if I start something new." "That's incredible, Mel." "It's not enough." I stared into the coffee. "Not to stop the merger, but it's enough to make it a hollow victory for Devon and Apex." Michaela sat across from me. So what's the next step? Sleep, hopefully. I attempted a smile. Then I meet with Lionel at 8 to go over our legal options. You should at least try to rest, she said, glancing at her watch. You've got less than 3 hours. I nodded, though I knew sleep would be impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Devon's face. Not angry, but disappointed, like I was a misbehaving child. That patronizing look he'd perfected over the years, the one that had always made me second-guess myself. What if I'm making a mistake? I asked quietly. Burning everything down like this? Michaela studied me for a long moment. Do you remember what you said when you started Meyer Consulting? When everyone told you the market was too crowded, the timing was wrong? I smiled faintly. That sometimes you have to tear down the old to build something better. Exactly. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Get some rest. The tearing down part is almost over. Tomorrow you start rebuilding. Lionel's office looked different in the harsh morning light. Less film noir, more pragmatic workspace. Or maybe it was just my exhaustion altering my perception. You look like you haven't slept, he said as I slumped into the chair across from his desk. Astute observation. Is that why they pay you the big bucks? He smiled slightly. That, and my charming personality. He pushed a folder toward me. I've been doing some digging into Apex. Their financials aren't as solid as they want people to believe. I flipped through the documents, trying to focus my bleary eyes. How does this help us? It doesn't stop the merger, he admitted. But it gives us leverage for your exit package. If Apex is overextending to make this acquisition, they'll want to avoid any additional complications. Like a messy public lawsuit from the founder? Exactly. He leaned forward. Melanie, I need to ask you something important. What do you want out of this? I blinked at him. What do you mean? I mean, what's your end game? Do you want money, revenge, your company back? Because each of those requires a different strategy. The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on stopping Devon that I hadn't clearly defined what victory would look like. I paused, really thinking about it. I want to protect what I built, the relationships, the culture, the mission, and I want Devon to face consequences for what he did. Lionel nodded slowly. Then we need to be smarter than just burning it all down. We need to be strategic. My phone buzzed with a text from Reagan. Emergency. Board meeting moved up to 10 a.m. Devon knows what you're doing. Shit, I muttered, showing Lionel the message. We're running out of time. He checked his watch. It's 8:30 now. Not much time to prepare. Prepare for what? We can't stop the vote. No, he agreed. But you can be there when it happens. The Meyer Consulting boardroom fell silent when I walked in at 9:55. 8 board members sat around the polished table, with Devon at the head. His eyes widened briefly before narrowing. Melanie, he said, recovering quickly. This is a closed meeting. I'm still a shareholder, I replied, taking the empty seat at the opposite end of the table. I have a right to be here. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. Given the circumstances, I interrupted, are that you're about to vote on selling this company to Apex Global without full information. Devon's jaw tightened. We've provided all relevant documentation, except for the fact that 17 of our major clients have indicated they'll terminate their contracts if this merger goes through. I placed a folder on the table. Or that 9 of our international partners have expressed the same intention. Murmurs rippled around the table. Devon's face flushed with anger. This is a desperate attempt to disrupt a beneficial business transaction, he said. Melanie has been contacting clients directly, making misleading statements. I told them the truth, I countered. That the company they trusted is being gutted and sold for parts. That the ethical standards they valued will be abandoned under Apex's management. This is exactly the kind of emotional, irrational behavior I was concerned about, Devon said to the board, making wild accusations, threatening the company's relationships. Actually, came a voice from the doorway, her accusations seem quite rational to me. Thomas Reed, CEO of Apex Global, stood there with two men I recognized as his chief counsel and CFO. Thomas, Devon said, standing quickly, we weren't expecting you until the signing. Clearly. Thomas's gaze moved from Devon to me. Ms. Meyer, I received some interesting calls last night, several from your Asian partners with whom we've had challenging relations in the past, and one from Nora Walker, who suggested I might want to reconsider this merger. My heart raced. Nora had called Thomas directly? Whatever concerns you have, Devon said smoothly, I'm sure we can address them after the vote. Thomas shook his head. I don't think so. Apex is withdrawing our offer, effective immediately. The boardroom erupted in shocked exclamations. Devon's face went from red to white in seconds. You can't do that, he sputtered. The contracts haven't been signed, Thomas finished for him. And won't be. Not when half the value we were purchasing appears to be walking out the door with your wife. He nodded respectfully in my direction. Good day, everyone. As Thomas and his team left, all eyes turned to Devon. For the first time since I'd known him, he seemed completely at a loss. Well, I said into the silence, unable to keep a slight tremor from my voice. I believe we need a new agenda for today's meeting. The boardroom hummed with tension as Devon struggled to regain control. This is merely a setback, he said, shuffling papers with trembling hands. There are other potential buyers. Who will all hear the same concerns from our clients and partners? I interjected. Face it, Devon, the company isn't worth what you promised without me. Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps we should adjourn to consider our options. No, I said firmly. We need to address this now. I looked around the table at the board members, people I'd known for years, who'd watched me build this company from nothing. Devon has been CEO for exactly 2 days, and he's already driven away our biggest potential acquisition and put our client relationships at risk. That's not fair, Devon snapped. You sabotaged the deal deliberately. I told our clients the truth, something you should have done from the beginning. I leaned forward. I'd like to propose a vote of no confidence in the current CEO. The room went still. Devon's laugh was sharp and brittle. You can't be serious. You have no authority to call such a vote. Actually, she does, said board member Elise, speaking for the first time. She'd been quiet throughout the chaos, observing with calculating eyes. As a shareholder, Melanie has the right to propose a vote at any board meeting. A vote that will fail, Devon said confidently. I control the majority of shares. Do you? I pulled out my phone and opened an email. Because I just received confirmation from my attorney that your power of attorney has been temporarily suspended pending investigation of potential fraud and misrepresentation. Devon's face went slack. That's impossible. Not when Nora Walker calls in favors from a judge she's known for 30 years. I smiled thinly. The suspension is only temporary, but it's enough for today's purposes. I could see Devon calculating rapidly, his eyes darting from face to face around the table, assessing who might still be loyal to him. Even without my shares, you don't have the votes, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Let's find out. I looked at Marcus. As board chair, would you please call the vote? Marcus hesitated, glancing between Devon and me. I could see the calculation in his eyes, which side to choose, which horse to back. Finally, he nodded. I call for a vote of no confidence in Devon Meyer as CEO of Meyer Consulting. He looked around the table. Those in favor? Elise's hand went up immediately. Then another board member, then another. I held my breath as the count reached 4, a tie with those still loyal to Devon. All eyes turned to Marcus, whose hand remained on the table. The deciding vote. Marcus, Devon said, his voice low and persuasive, think about what you're doing. Everything we've discussed for the future of this company? I am thinking about the future, Marcus replied quietly. He raised his hand. In favor. The air left Devon's lungs in an audible rush. This is a mistake, he said, looking around the table. A terrible mistake that you'll all regret. The vote carries, Marcus announced, ignoring him. Devon Meyer is removed as CEO, effective immediately. He turned to me. The board will need to appoint an interim CEO while we conduct a proper search. I'd like to nominate Melanie Meyer to return to her position, Elise said promptly. My heart skipped. I hadn't expected this, had been prepared to walk away, start something new. But looking around at the boardroom, at the company I'd built, I felt a surge of possessiveness so strong it nearly took my breath away. Second, said another board member. Marcus nodded. Those in favor? This time all hands went up except Devon's remaining loyalists. It was enough. Congratulations, Melanie, Marcus said. Welcome back. Devon stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, he said, voice tight with fury. You think you've won, but you've just declared war. I met his gaze steadily. No, Devon. The war is over. You lost. As he stormed toward the door, I called after him. One more thing. He paused but didn't turn. I want my dress back. The black Valentino that Chiara was wearing last night. Have it dry cleaned and sent to my office. A muscle twitched in his jaw as he walked out without another word. The room exhaled collectively. Marcus turned to me. What now? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settling back onto my shoulders. It felt right. It felt like coming home. Now we rebuild, I said, starting with calling Thomas Reed to apologize for the confusion and see if Apex might be interested in a strategic partnership instead of an acquisition. As the board members nodded approvingly, I felt a strange sense of gratitude toward Devon. In trying to destroy me, he'd forced me to fight for what mattered, and in the process, discover just how strong I really was. If you'll excuse me, I said, standing up, I need to make some calls. We have clients and partners to reassure. I walked out of the boardroom with my head high, past the desk where Reagan had sat, past the corner office that had briefly been Devon's, to the large glass-walled space that had always been mine. My name was still on the door. Inside, I ran my fingers along the edge of my desk, reacquainting myself with its smooth surface. Through the glass walls, I could see employees watching me, whispering to each other. News traveled fast. I picked up the phone and dialed Michaela first. It's done, I said when she answered. I'm back. Never doubted you for a second, she replied, but I could hear the relief in her voice. As I hung up, I noticed a small velvet box on my desk, the diamond earrings Devon had given me on our anniversary. There was no note, no explanation for how they'd gotten there. I opened the box, looking at the sparkling stones that had once seemed so beautiful. Now they just looked cold and hard, like Devon's eyes when his mask had finally slipped. I closed the box and dropped it into my desk drawer. Some gifts were too expensive, no matter how they sparkled. The divorce papers arrived on my desk exactly 1 week after the boardroom showdown. I signed them without hesitation, a quick scrawl that ended 10 years of marriage in less time than it takes to approve an expense report. The irony wasn't lost on me. Are you sure you don't want to negotiate for more? Lionel asked as I handed the papers back to him. He's offering a clean split just to avoid publicity, but we could push for... I don't want anything from him, I said. Just my freedom and my company. Lionel nodded, tucking the papers into his briefcase. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Clean breaks heal faster. After he left, I stood at my office window, watching the city buzz below. The past week had been a blur of client meetings, staff reassurances, and damage control. I'd barely had time to process what had happened, let alone how I felt about it. My intercom buzzed. Melanie, Reagan's here to see you. I smiled at the sound of my new assistant's voice. Send her in. Reagan entered, looking more polished than I'd ever seen her, tailored blazer, confident stride. She'd accepted my offer to return with one condition, a promotion to project manager. The partnership agreement with Apex is ready for your review, she said, placing a folder on my desk. Thomas wants to move forward as soon as possible. Thank you. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit for a minute. She sat, watching me with curious eyes. Everything okay? I just signed my divorce papers. Oh. Her expression softened. How does it feel? I considered the question. Like taking off shoes that never quite fit right. Relief, mostly. She nodded, understanding. I have something for you, actually. I wasn't sure when to give it to you, but maybe now is the right time. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and placed it on my desk. What's this? Everything Devon didn't want you to see. Her eyes met mine steadily. I've been making copies of his files for months. I stared at her, stunned. Months? Before any of this happened? She nodded. I noticed things changing last fall. The private meetings, the calls he'd take in the stairwell, how he started excluding you from client conversations. She shrugged. It didn't feel right. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? She asked simply. You trusted him. The truth of it stung. I wouldn't have believed her, would have defended Devon, maybe even fired Reagan for disloyalty. Thank you, I said, picking up the flash drive, for seeing what I couldn't. After she left, I plugged it in, not sure what to expect. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Emails dating back 18 months, detailing Devon's plan to push me out, conversations with board members, carefully cultivating their support, financial projections doctored to make my initiatives look less successful than they were, and there, in a folder labeled Contingencies, a document outlining exactly how he'd use my father's death against me. He'd planned it all while holding me as I cried, while promising to handle the details so I could grieve. My hands shook as I closed the files. I'd thought I understood the depth of his betrayal. I hadn't even scratched the surface. The penthouse felt cavernous as I packed the last of my things. I'd decided to sell it. Too many memories. Too much Devon in every corner. Michaela had offered her guest room until I found a new place, but I'd booked a hotel instead. I needed neutral ground, space to think. As I zipped my suitcase, the front door opened. I froze, listening to familiar footsteps in the entryway. Devon appeared in the bedroom doorway, stopping short when he saw me. He looked thinner, the confident gleam in his eyes dimmed. I thought you'd be at the office, he said. Clearly. I continued packing, refusing to let his presence disrupt my rhythm. I'm almost done. The place is yours until it sells. He watched me for a moment. I heard about the Apex partnership. Clever move. It made business sense. It always does with you. There was something in his voice. Not quite bitterness. Not quite admiration. That's what I miscalculated, you know. I thought you'd be too emotional to fight back effectively. I looked up at him. That was always your blind spot, Devon. Thinking emotion makes people weak. Doesn't it? No, it makes us human. I zipped my toiletry bag. My emotions didn't cloud my judgment, they clarified it. He moved further into the room, stopping at the dresser where a single framed photo remained, us on our wedding day. He picked it up, studying it. We could have been extraordinary together, he said quietly. We were, I replied, until you decided extraordinary wasn't enough. He set the photo down, turning to face me. What happens now? Now? I closed my suitcase with finality. Now I rebuild what you tried to destroy, and you... I shrugged. You live with what you've done. As I moved to leave, he stepped aside, but said, They're already calling it a comeback story, you know. The business journals, the blogs. Melanie Meyer's triumphant return. They're painting you as the victim who fought back. I paused at the doorway. Is that what bothers you most? That I'm getting the sympathetic narrative? What bothers me is that you're letting them define you by your relationship to me. The wife who was betrayed. The woman who took back what her husband stole. His eyes met mine. You're more than that, Melanie. You always were. The words hit with unexpected force. Even now, he could see parts of me others missed. You're right, I said. I am more than that, and I always was. I picked up my suitcase. That's why you lost. I walked out without looking back, the weight of the past 10 years lifting with each step. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and called Nora. It's done, I said when she answered. I'm officially divorced and homeless. Perfect timing, she replied. I've been thinking about our conversation last week. The foundation you want to start for women entrepreneurs? I'd like to be your first investor. I smiled, stepping out into the lobby. I was hoping you'd say that. One condition, she added. We name it something other than the Meyer Foundation. New beginnings deserve new names. Outside, the city stretched before me, full of possibilities I hadn't let myself see before. Buildings I'd walked past 1,000 times suddenly looked different. Not landmarks in a familiar landscape, but potential spaces for whatever I decided to build next. I like the sound of that, I said, hailing a taxi. New beginnings, new names. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back at the building where I'd lived with Devin. There was nothing there I needed anymore. Some people spend their whole lives becoming who they're meant to be. I'd done it in a week,